Hi, I'm Katie Hughes. I'm a 21-year-old radio presenter and I want to find out why there's not enough women being heard on our radios.
For me, it all started in CRCFM when I was just 16 years of age. I got to experience what it was like to be a radio presenter, and after just 2 weeks of work experience, they actually let me on air. From there, I got to experience what it was like to work in regional radio stations and also to see what it was like to work with national radio. From the different radio stations I've visited, I've noticed one thing: there's not many female radio voices being heard on air, and I want to find out why. So for this documentary, I'm going to talk to some of the women who work on radio, and I'm going to see what their opinions are on the situation.
For the purpose of this documentary, I created a survey based on women in radio. One of the questions I asked was, are there enough female presenters heard on air? 0.37% of people said women are not meant to be presenters. 1.12% said there are too many female presenters. 24.63% said there are an equal amount of men and women on air, while 73.88% of people said there are not enough women heard on air. iRadio is a regional radio station based in Athlone in County Roscommon. I went to talk to their news and co-breakfast show presenter, Una O'Carroll, to see what she thinks about women in radio broadcasting.
I suppose the most challenging thing was getting your foot in the door somewhere, getting someone to give you a chance. I was very, very nervous. Any interviews I would go to, I remember one instance, I was so nervous, they said, listen, have a cup of tea now. And they gave me a cup of tea in a saucer, and I was shaking so much that the tea spilled into the saucer. But actually, funny enough, I got that gig. It was a weekend gig doing news in iRadio about 8 years ago. So it took me a long time just to get my foot in the door. It's a lot of persistence required, a lot of dedication, and you need to want it a lot. So I suppose, yeah, that was the most challenging thing, getting someone to give me a chance. I did the news for a long time separately before I got into presenting, even though presenting was what I actually really wanted to do, but I love news and current affairs as well. Yeah, I think women are very unfair on other women, really, aren't they? And I don't understand this kind of perception that women don't like listening to other women on air. I just don't understand it. I would be proud of another woman on air, and I enjoy listening to women. So I think that's kind of, I don't know, women do put other pressure on other women. But I don't think if you want to enter this industry, I don't think that you should let that put you off. Even if you think that your voice isn't worthy for radio, sure, that's not true. There's more and more colloquial voices being heard on radio nowadays anyway, and if you think you'll be good at what you want to do and you have a passion for it, I just think just do it. I will say that there could be more female presenters in primetime slots, definitely. But I think that the radio industry has come a long way. I think, stations like this are driving the fact that, more women can be primetime presenters. So I think maybe it's not enough now, but I definitely think that as an industry, we're definitely getting better.
Another question I asked in my survey was, what role do you think women occupy the most? 0.37% of people voted that women are sound engineers. 5.90% of people voted that women work most in accounts. 8.49% of people voted other, which included roles such as weather and entertainment report updates. 19.19% of people voted that women are mostly producers. 21.40% of people believe that women are mostly presenters, while 44.65% of people believe that women are mostly newsreaders. Next, I went to local radio station Midwest Radio in Ballyhonus in County Mayo. I went to talk to their full-time news and sports editor, Angelina Nugent, to see what she thinks about women in radio.
Personally, I think there's a lot of women that have branched into radio broadcasting in the last number of years. Now, there's probably a perception out there, though, that they're niched into certain areas of radio, like news, and that's borne out maybe in Midwest Radio a little bit as well. We have 3 women full-time here in our news department. 1 man, he's blessed amongst women, but it is primarily women in newsrooms across local radio, I think in particular. I think it's that time-old battle, isn't it, that there are some jobs that are traditionally associated with men, and for a long number of years broadcasting would have been traditionally areas of broadcasting associated with men, and there would have been the more mainstream programmes associated more so with men broadcasting. Is it that women are intimidated going into that environment, or they're being turned down for positions that are being given to men simply because they are men? And that's probably a whole bigger area. Are there women who simply feel that they shouldn't try to break into radio because they won't get the job, or is it a different scenario? Where I found it most stressful, the way I started covering sport, was actually going to games and going to matches and doing reports. And I did get a few snide comments and smart comments in the very early days. I started while I was at secondary school when I was 15 or 16 covering games for the radio. So I wasn't based in the station, I was out at matches. So you had a lot maybe of the older generation who weren't used to it. Not all, it was a minority I have to say, who would give you a few smart comments about girls covering matches and what would you know, etc, etc. I do think women have become a little bit more popular in terms of mainstream broadcasting, because you'd have seen maybe the likes of Louise Duffy nationally. There's a few bigger names out there. Louise McSharry's another big name over the last while nationally. So I think more mainstream programmes are starting to come round to it. But are there enough? Are we ever happy that there are enough women in any area? But probably not as many as we'd like to see.
My final visit is to Clare FM in Ennis in County Clare. I'm going to go speak to producer and news presenter Fiona McGarry to see what she thinks about women in radio broadcasting.
I think there are a lot of women in newsrooms, which is a good thing. There are a lot of women in producer roles and researcher roles, which is also a good thing, but very often they tend to be supporting male presenters. So for example, they might be organising the programme and then it's the male presenter who actually broadcasts and delivers and goes out on air. I really do think, though, it's important in broadcasting this is a balance of voices. So even within a newsroom, personally, I don't think it should be all female voices. I think there should be a mix to reflect the reality of life. If you look across the board at the commercial stations, there are certainly fewer female broadcasters in anchor roles, we'd say presenting morning programmes, for example, or flagship programmes on local stations, and I think that is definitely an issue. It is something that irritates me, I must say, because I know personally there are no shortage of excellent female contributors, excellent female politicians. The more professional experience you build up, the more aware you become that your male colleagues don't face the same kinds of challenges and barriers. Society criticises female broadcasters. There are female broadcasters who've had to close their Twitter accounts, and these are national broadcasters because of the backlash and the criticism that male journalists and male broadcasters don't seem to experience. And also there's a massive focus, particularly in the television industry, I think, for women on their personal appearance, which I think pressurises a lot of women. So I think it's important for women to support each other within broadcasting. There are some good organisations that encourage women on air, for example, that raise awareness of the lack of female voices. Sometimes people, they feel, well, I didn't get the job, so therefore broadcasting is not for me. You really have to try and you have to keep trying and you have to knock on an awful lot of doors. Sometimes maybe women become discouraged. So I think female broadcasters in the industry can play a huge role by encouraging other women coming up the ranks to stay at it and to keep knocking on the doors, because whether you're male or female, it's a tough industry. I mean, there's no getting away from that. You have to be very lucky, you have to be very hardworking, and you do have to keep getting up and trying every day.
So there you have it. 73.88% of people believe there are not enough females being heard on air. You've heard the opinions from 3 female radio presenters, and women are occupying the same roles. News presenters, producers, accounts. We need to change this. How do we do it? Well, we need an even mix of voices heard on air. As a student, I think we should promote courses a bit more in Ireland. How do we do it? Well, you need to motivate women into going into these courses and you need to encourage them. Another way of encouraging people is by female radio presenters telling women that they can do it and telling them they can go for lead roles. If we don't do this, we're not going to have an even mix of voices on air, and we're going to be asking ourselves the age-old question, where's my voice?